In this video, I want to show you how you can make the most of your free 30-day trial of the Crisscross generator. So if you haven't already got access, if you go to bospublishing.gumroad.com, look for the Crisscross generator monthly PC and Mac OS. And then on here, you'll see that it's £0 plus a month. So just put 0 under name of fair price and hit subscribe, and that will give you a free 30-day trial, which will automatically end. So there's no card details required and you won't be charged. So why not give it a go? And on top of this, everything that you create during this period, so these completely free 30 days, you have full commercial rights to. So you can upload it onto KDP, sell it on Etsy, whatever you like. So once you've subscribed, you've downloaded the software, when you load it, it will look a little bit like this screen here. Now, as you can see, there are quite a few options here, but don't worry, we're going to go through them one by one to make sure that you can make the most out of the software. So on the left hand side here, under puzzle setup, our first option is word list generator. Now, this is a optional upgrade, so that I'm not going to cover it in this video. But what this does basically is allows you to generate word lists and questions for word lists ready to use in the Crisscross generator. If you have access to the word list generator, you will have access to this as well. But again, I'll cover that in another video, which I'll link below. So the first option that we want to pay attention to is select your input file. So the Crisscross generator supports a variety of different input files. It supports text files, Excel files, open document spreadsheets, and files exported from the puzzle generator export tool. So in this video, I'm going to cover text, Excel, and open document spreadsheets, because if you have the puzzle generator and you're using the tool, then you'll know how that works. But if you're just using the Crisscross generator, I recommend that you stick with text, Excel, or open document spreadsheets. So if you're creating a text file, the layout needs to start with a title, and a title is designated by the hash symbol. And then after this, you'd place your question, followed by the pipe symbol, and then the answer or word to that question or clue. And then you would repeat that for however many questions or clues that you want in that particular crossword. And then you would put another hash to start another crossword. So you might have then crossword 1 here, 8 questions and words, then another hash, crossword 2, and then another bunch of questions as well. Now, it's important to note that you do not need the same amount of questions in each one. Each crossword can have a varying amount of questions and words in it. That's completely up to you. So if I just show you now quickly a text file. So as you can see here, I have my title here, and I have my questions, followed by the pipe symbol and the answer. And then this is repeated for crossword 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So with this file, it would create 5 different crosswords. Now, the next file I'm going to show you is Excel or open document spreadsheets. These are laid out exactly the same, and it doesn't matter if you create an Excel or OpenOffice, LibreOffice, or you use an online tool such as Google Sheets. As long as you follow the layout and save it as an Excel file or an ODS file, then you'll be perfectly fine. So how this is set up is 3 columns with the titles, question, answer, and title. So again, in the left-hand column here, we want to list our questions. In the middle column, our answers, and then in our final column, our crossword titles. So again, where a title is designates the start of a new word search. So obviously at the beginning here, we want the title straight under the heading here. And then as I have my next title at question 16, that means that this is the first question that will start my crossword 2. And again, you can repeat this for as many different crosswords as you like. And again, you can have a varying amount of questions in each crossword. So once obviously you have your file set up, then you'd hit browse and select it in there. Now after this is the option for our crossword width and height. Now we also here have an option to auto size. So if I auto size, let's put that on PNG to start with. If I auto size it, what this will do, this will start off with a very small grid and then try to make it bigger as it goes along to fit the words in. So when you auto size, you get quite a tight knit grid with not lots of blank space on the sides or the top. So if you have, for example, a lot of varying size crosswords, for example, if you had one with 5 words, 10 words, 20 words in, this would make sure that the actual grid size itself has minimal gaps or spacing on the sides and the top and the bottom. So as you can see, I have a quick example here, and that's an auto size. I have minimal spacing on my sides and my top and bottom. However, you can also set a size. So if you wanted to keep a consistent size through all your generations, that means the grid would be exactly the same size in every single crossword, regardless of the words and questions used. Then you can set the width and height here in the cells. So again, if I hit update, just to show you the preview here. And also it's important to note when you're setting your width and your height, that this will control the size of the word that you can fit in the grid. So if you have words in your word list that are longer or larger than the crossword size, then they will not fit in the grid and it will not include them. See, as you can see now, as I've set the width and the height myself, we've got a lot of extra space here at the top and the bottom. So again, you'd want to play around with the sizing to make sure you can get the right result for you. So I'm going to just switch back to auto size and I'm going to update that again. Our next option after our sizing is to put a puzzle file name and a solution file name. So this will be the name of the file or the image that you export when you generate your puzzles. So by default, if you leave it blank, you'd get puzzle 0, solution 0, puzzle 1, solution 1, puzzle 2, solution 2, and so on. If you want to set a custom name here, you can. So for example, you might want to put crossword and crossword solution, and then you'd get the same numbering, but with those file names instead. Now after this, we have a couple of options to do with word place and scramble clues. So I'm going to come back to them. Initially, I just want to show you how to create a crossword and the customization we have for that. And then I'm going to come back to creating a word place and a scramble variation. So our next option here is to generate crosswords and questions separately. Now, by default, as you can see in my preview here, we have the grid, and then underneath we have the questions or clues. But for example, if you wanted to create a large print book, for example, and you wanted to try and ensure that the sizing, the font size was large, you might want to split the grid and questions onto two separate pages. So what this does, if I tick that and I hit update preview, just telling me I need to choose a folder for my questions. So let's just quickly choose a folder, hit update again, just wait for that process to complete. So then what I will get is I will get my puzzle in one file, and then in another file I will get my question. So like I say, I can use that then to import or have the actual grid on one page and then the questions or clues on another page. And then after this, I have the option to place my crosswords and questions side by side. So the preview won't change when you tick this feature, but rather than this preview here, which you can click to make bigger, like so, rather than that preview there being two separate files, when you tick place crosswords and questions side by side, it will export that as one file. So if you wanted to have, for example, multiple crosswords per page, you could generate them like this, and then obviously you could then fit in a couple of grids per page depending obviously on your sizing, etc. Now after this, we have an option to not include questions in our solutions. So if I go back to the standard layout now, where you'll get, obviously you get the grid here, and then underneath you have the questions. And this is the same for both the puzzle and the solution. So for example, if you wanted to perhaps include multiple solutions per page at the end, what you might like to do is tick this box, and then that way the puzzle would stay the same, but the questions or clues would not be included in your solution file, and you'll just end up with the main grid itself. Now after this is an option to show the title. So that's the title up here, to have obviously the title from your file, crossword 1 or whatever you set it to. If you want to, you can hide this by unticking the box. Our next option here is to append text to solution file. Now by default, if this is not ticked, then both the actual crossword and the solution will have the same title. So if I just untick this to show you, they would both share, in this example, crossword 1. But then what you can do, if you want, is append additional text here, like I had previously. For example, you might want to have the text solution or your choice of word. Just hit update on that again. After this is the option for our question file name. So if I am generating my crosswords and questions separately, I can choose a name for my question files in the same way that I could choose a name for my puzzle and my solution files. Again, these would be numbered upwards from 0 by default, which then brings me on to the next feature. You can change the starting sequence number. So as mentioned, by default, this is 0, but obviously you might want to start this at 1, or you might want to change this to another number. So whatever number you set here will be the first number of the puzzle generated in the file name. So if I put 20, then my first crossword 1 would be called puzzle underscore 20, solution underscore 20. Our next option is our attempts. So by default, this is 10. And to be honest with you, 10 I feel is the optimal amount from obviously testing and using the software. But you can play around with this a little bit. But to be honest, if it doesn't fit all your words in 10 attempts, then it's likely not to happen. Now, after this, we get onto our export format. So here we can choose from a PNG, a JPEG, SVG, which is obviously vector file, and PDF. Now you can see here that my width and height, and this is the same for JPEG, are both set to 1024. So how this works is a little bit different to how you might initially imagine. Because the crosswords, depending on sizing, for example, if you've got auto size, or depending on the length or size of your questions, because these can vary, what this does is set a minimum size. So this will set a minimum width of 1024 and a minimum height of 1024. So, for example, in my preview here, what this would be is obviously my width would be 1024, being the shortest side, and then my height would obviously be more than that. And this is the same for JPEG, as you can see. And then SVG, you can't set the width and height because it's a scalable, fully scalable, so there's no need to do that. And then on these three options, obviously you want to choose where you're saving your puzzle files, where you're saving your question files if you're using them, and then where you're saving your solutions. And then on PDF, we have a few more different options here, because with a PDF, the aim is obviously to create a file that we can upload or is ready for publishing. So here we have the option to set our trim size or page size in width and height, and this is in inches. We can set our margins and minimum spacing, so we've got our top, bottom margin, our left and right margin, gutter margin. So this is more important, obviously, if you're creating a larger crossword book, then you might want to put a small gutter on because this would prevent the feel or the look that the puzzles are actually getting sucked into the binding. Again, this is more important when you're making a larger book. Again, all in inches. And then we have our horizontal spacing and our vertical spacing. So if we are having more than one puzzle per page or more than one solution per page, this controls the minimum spacing that we have between them. So then if I hit update preview, this will now show you what this crossword would look like with my settings. So with the 6:9 trim size and my margins, and obviously my one puzzle per page and my one solution per page. So as you can see now, this is what it would currently look like. So at the minute, as I mentioned earlier, I don't include the questions in solutions. So this is an idea of what it would look like. My crossword would look like this with the margins, and then my solution would look like this, both one per page. But the great thing about creating a PDF file is that we can control the number of puzzles and solutions per page. For example, as I don't have the questions included on the solution, what I might like to do is have 2 solutions per page. So we'll just wait for that to update. So then what I'd have is obviously I had my crossword like this, and there would be two solutions of this size. So one and then underneath the second one. Or for example, as I mentioned earlier, you could place the crossword and questions side by side, and then you might want to increase the puzzles per page. So for example, if I put it to 2 puzzles per page, we'll just wait for this process to complete. Again, it then would look like this with 2 puzzles. So I'd have obviously the crossword one here and my questions, and then another one underneath as well. Now, obviously, you'd need to play around with your sizing and your settings, which then brings me on to my next point, which is how we can control the visuals. So I'm going to go back to having 1 and 1 per page and just click update. Now, we now have a ton of options of how we can control the visuals of our crossword. So actually, let's take off the side by side as well, so we get a nice big version here. Now, my first option under my settings is my numbers. Now, these are obviously these numbers here. I can control the alignment of them both vertically and horizontally. For example, if I wanted to move them up a little bit, I could, or down, or to the other side. Again, you just drag these sliders along to where you want them. I can control the font and the font size. So let's have a look at that. So let's make them a touch bigger. And then let's make them italic rather than bold. And again, any preview, any changes that you make and you want to see them, just hit the update preview button, and then you'll get an updated version of what it would look like. So as you can see now, they're now italic, not bold, and a little bit larger. And then I can do the same here for my letters. So as you can see here, my horizontal alignment, I've got on 0.74. This is because as I have a larger number, I've moved the letter down in the grid so that the number and the letter don't overlap. But again, depending on your settings, you may wish to move the letter further, or for example, I've still kept it vertically in the middle, but you could, for example, move it further over to the right or to the left. And all you do, again, is drag the slider, hit update, and then we'll see the updated visual here. So as you can see, now my letters are further over to the right. So you have full control here. And again, you can do this with the font size, and change the styling. After this is our main title. So that's the title that appears at the top of the grid. So this is the title that it gets from your WordList file. You can set the padding here. So that's the gap between the title and the crossword. Again, you can decrease it, increase it, depending on your other settings. Obviously, you may wish to play around with it a little bit to get your optimal result. So I've made it a bit smaller. And again, I choose my fonts, my font size. So if I wanted to, I can make that a little bit bigger. Wait for that update to complete. So it's a little bit bigger now. And again, my next option is for my question titles. So that's what you can see here, the across and the down. I can change these if I want by typing in here. Again, I can set the font size, and again, the styling, whether I want it bold, italic, or underlined as well. And then the same applies for my question text, so that's the text underneath the titles. Again, I can control the font, sizing, and styling. Now after this, we get on to the coloring. So as you may have noticed, my grid color is currently gray, but you can select from any color that you want. For example, if you prefer black, again, if we hit update, you'll then see that my grid will change to black. You have full control here. You can choose any color that you want. See, it's now black. And the same for my numbers. As you might have seen, they are currently gray. But again, you might like to change them back to being black. Just wait for that to update. And you see I've got my black numbers now. And again, I can do this for my text as well. So my text is currently black. So it's all this text here. If I want to, I can change that to another color. Again, principle is exactly the same. You could choose any color that you want and then just hit update preview to see it. Now, our next option here is the fill color. So by default, the fill is not on. That's this option here. But again, you can go in here, choose any color that you want. And then if you want to fill the grid, tick this box here. And then this will add the fill to the grid. So we'll just wait for that to update. So as you can see now, you now have the black fill in the grid. But again, you can change the color of that if you want to. Our next option here is our gap between the puzzles and the questions. So that's this gap that you can see here. The gap between the actual puzzles and the questions. Again, we can decrease that or increase it as you so wish. Just hit update there. As you can see, it's moved closer. And then after this is the gap between the question titles and our questions. So that's the gap between obviously across and the start of our questions. We can obviously play around with that, make it smaller or larger as you wish. After this is our grid line thickness. So that's the thickness of our grid lines. For example, you may want them to be a little bit bolder or a little bit thinner. Play around with the number in here and just hit update to get an updated preview, like so. And then obviously I've just already covered the fill. Our final two options on our styling are whether we want to force an uppercase grid or a lowercase grid. So as you can see here, I've got uppercase, so all capital letters. But for example, if you want a lowercase grid, tick that, and then all the letters would be lowercase. And then finally, we have the option to force uppercase questions. So that means all my questions would be in capital letters or normal case. And normal case is following the formatting that you had in the file. So if I bring this up now, this follows the formatting style that I have in my actual file, my text file with my crosswords in. So once you obviously have all your settings, you can go across and hit generate, and that will start the generation process. But what you might like to do, particularly if you found the perfect settings and you really like them, you can save them. So if you hit save settings button at the top, you can give your settings file a name, save it, and then what you can do is then later on is if you want to come back to those settings, hit load settings and load them, and all your settings will be back ready for you to generate again. So the final option that I haven't covered before we hit generate is shut down after generation completed. So this feature is obviously useful if you're generating a ton of puzzles, and what it will do is once the process has completed, it will shut down your computer. But if you do use this option, make sure that all your work is all saved, because it will, otherwise you may lose it. So now we're all good to go. All we have to do is hit generate, and then it will start generating my puzzles, and then they will come out like my preview over here. So now we've covered crossword. What I want to show you is the variations. So we can create a word place variation. So with a word place, rather than having clues, you'll have a word underneath, and then you have to work out where they fit in the grid with no numbering. So I can show you with this file here, but because this file here obviously has clues, it will have the clues still, but this is a variation you can do on a word place, is that rather than having just the words to place, the user has to not only answer the question to find out the word, and then they have to work out where the word goes. So this is a variation of a word place where you've got clues rather than words. And then again, obviously at the minute they're split into across and down, but what we can do is shuffle them to make it more difficult. Then that way there's no longer across or down, and the questions are shuffled, which then makes it harder, like so. And then if you want to create a traditional word place where obviously there's just words to place in a grid rather than having clues, how we lay out the file is a little bit different. So if I quickly create one in the word list generator, so let's go for some animals in general. Where are we? Here. And then let's just do 5 out of 10 and maximum characters of 12. So if I do that, let's create that. Fill in words. Right, so now if I show you that file, so if I go into here, let's wait for that to load up. So this is how you would create a fill-in word list. So as you can see, the layout is basically the same as a crossword one with the titles designated by the hash, but rather than having a question, we just have the word, like so, and then the same is repeated all the way down. So if I now go in here and I update my input file, choose text to fill in words, and then I hit update, this will now create the more traditional word place variation where obviously you have the words already rather than the clues. So we'll just wait for this process to complete. And now, as you can see with the previews generated, it now has the words to place underneath. And then just quickly, there's one more variation that we can do, and that is to scramble the clues. So at the minute, obviously the words are as they are and they're not scrambled. So you can create a word place with scrambled clues. So if I update that, so that means the clues, so the words underneath would be scrambled. So you've got two challenges. You have to unscramble the word, and on top of that, work out where to place the word. So we'll just wait for that to complete. And now that's complete. If I go in here, as you can see, the words are now scrambled. And then finally, what we can do is, rather than creating a word place, so we untick that, we can create just a scramble. So what that is more like a traditional crossword where you have the numbering and the words, but instead of having the questions or clues, the clues are the word in scrambled form. So you'd have to decipher the letters to go into the appropriate numbered section. So I hope this quick introduction video to using the crisscross generator helps you get started with your free trial. Thank you for watching.